Hello and welcome to FBNC Smart Money. Now, the Red Sea crisis has sent shockwaves through global trade, altering supply chains dynamics and challenging economies worldwide. The complex confluence of geopolitical tensions and maritime security threats has emerged as a critical concern for nations reliant on the vital waterway for trade. And as tensions escalate and uncertainties loom, the implications of the crisis resonate far beyond the region and impacting global commerce in profound ways. And today we aim to dissect the current context of the Red Sea crisis and its reverberations across the economic landscape, with a particular focus on its ramifications for Vietnam's trade. And joining us now here are the two distinguished experts in logistics and supply chain management, Dr. Major George and Dr. Irfan Uhad from RMIT University, Vietnam. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Now, Dr. Major and Dr. Irfan, first of all, could you please give us an overview of the context of the Red Sea crisis and its severity of the impacts on the global trade thus far?
When we look into the Red Sea crisis, it has a big global impact. So, for example, the ships now, because of mainly the Houthi militants' interference there, they have to go a detour. They have to take a detour, and it costs many days more. They have to go around the Cape of Good Hope. So that means that around 9 days extra. It actually affects the delivery. And also the empty containers, return of the empty containers on time, which definitely is a big problem. So we can see that the Suez Canal basically caters to around 12 to 15% of the international trade. And now, after this crisis, 67% of the trade has been declined. So that is having a very big impact when compared to the last year. Especially for LNGs, that is liquefied natural gas, especially in January, since the mid-January this year. So North American supply chains also have big problem because the routes from North Asia to the US and West Coast is being affected. So again, suspending of sailings through the Red Sea has triggered 20% hike in the freight rates. So that actually going to have a big impact in the economy and the business thing. So, for example, 40% of the Robusta coffee is now, we would say that 16-year high now, the price. So it's not easy for seller. It's not easy for the buyer because the price is actually, fluctuating a lot.
Right.
So, for example, before COVID, the cost of a 20-foot container from Vietnam to Europe, approximately from $1,500 to $2,500. To US, it's around $2,500 to $3,500. $2,500 to $3,500. For 40-foot, it was around $3,000 to $5,000, and to Europe, and $5,000 to $7,000 to US. So during the COVID pandemic, again, it went up. And it went up to $8,000 to $12,000 per container. And now with this current crisis, even though after this the price actually went down, now a 20-foot container around, what I'm saying is not exact, but around, including the insurance and other fees, which is something around 6,000 to 8,000 per container for 20-foot, and for 40-foot container from 8 to 12,000 to Europe, and 12 to 16,000 for US. So this means that it actually affecting the business a lot, very badly. Imagine when you could send something for a much lower cost, and now it plummeted. It's a big problem. And if you look into the statistics, Vietnam's import-export turnover in 2023 to Europe was 71 billion, and US was around 122 billion. America around 28.4% of the country's total import-export for the last year. So there is a big problem. See, because of this crisis, it actually affecting every industry, not just one particular thing.
Sure.
So an overall picture is, this is what is the overall picture.
Right, so we can see that the world economy's inflation is getting higher and higher. But Dr. Irfan, according to you, according to your statistics or your research so far, which country has been the most impacted by this crisis? Because, like Dr. Major said, everyone is affected, and of course the Yemen, Iran, which is backed up for Houthi militants, is also affected by this kind of war. So, what do you say on this?
I think when we talk about supply chain, particularly, it's not one country or it's not one organization. It's not a particular network, because supply chain itself is network of the networks. And when we talk about the global value chains, if we see a simple scenario, it's a buyer and a seller. So wherever actually you cross through, and particularly this Red Sea area, which is really a prominent route for all the supply chains in the global network, I think all the countries, whoever is shipping through, whoever is importing, whoever is exporting, is heavily affected. Dr. Majo added about 67% decline in the business, in terms of the route differentiation. So this basically, the costs are rising, and whoever is involved in this chain, wherever actually we are passing through, actually is really impacting. So it's not only like the seller or a specific country, particularly either India or Vietnam, but all the countries who are actually involved in the chain, they are actually part of the heavy issue. This actually brings the toll on those all countries. Okay, particularly it's a big challenge for the companies who are actually producing, and for Vietnam, which is actually emerging economy, and a lot of industries, for example, textile, for example, rubber industry is there, semiconductors, and Vietnam actually signed several agreements with India, Australia, and other agreements as well. So I think being part of this whole big nexus, but then this Red Sea issue is impacting in terms of movement of the goods towards your final end, is going to break. It's complex issue.
Right. Yeah. But somehow people wouldn't, wondering that why the tax is going on, the war is going on, because everyone is affected, and no one is winning here. So anyway, turning our attention to Vietnam, and apparently we see that we've seen significant disruptions to Vietnam's trade. So could you please elaborate on the challenges that it has posed to Vietnam's economy as a whole? First.
The first is the extended shipping time and the increased cost, and it actually affects industries a lot because our overhead costs are going up and it is skyrocketing. So before, see, in import-export industry, the competition is very high. So those countries who have been affected will have big impact. The second one may be operational cost and container shortages. So we're not getting empty containers. We need to have empty containers on time. So again, this is affecting the shipping. So it's actually a big problem, and it definitely have impacts on industries, especially those industries who are looking in just in time. So though they will have a big problem, because the flow must not break, and it is right now it is actually breaking these things. So and another one is insurance premium and fuel cost because of this crisis, and that is a big issue as well. And market access is another issue. Demand fluctuations, because when the price increases, people will tempted to not to buy, especially those things which are not necessities. Necessities they will buy, but not that necessity. People will, let's buy it later. So that affects the industry in a very bad range. And when it comes to Vietnam, because Vietnam is one of the biggest exporters and manufacturer, number one is we need to get raw materials in. In the majority of the manufacturing industry here, they are importing their raw materials. A lot of sectors. So if that is going to be affected, again, export definitely will be affected as well. And Vietnamese industries like rice and agricultural products, coffee and all those things also have the same impact.
Yeah, I think textile, textile and shoe manufacturing is really something big for the Vietnamese supply chains or the logistic or the manufacturers as well. However, if we look at the raw material like cotton, and certain type of raw material comes from China or India, but once you get this material, and you produce the products, as Dr. Majo stated about, the rising cost due to this transportation. So if you produce the products and then end of the day you actually can't really sell them, the whole financial flow, you can't really get the money back, and then you can't really run your operations. So this, I think, particularly garments really flourishing here in Vietnam, and that is one of the sector I think is being faced a quite number of challenges. I have a couple of friends who actually work in garments, and they particularly told that we are not receiving the orders because of this particular conflict.
Right.
Just when they try to negotiate the cost, and then they tell, this additional cost due to the shipping routes, particularly it impacts their negotiation power as well. And finally, they are actually having a challenge in terms of continuous production and also getting the extra business as well.
Yeah, right. So basically, exports and imports will be severely affected. And you have named textile, some agricultural products that have already been impacted. But to look at the bigger picture, basically, what other sectors in the industry is most vulnerable to these disruptions?
In my view, I think every industry. So for example, manufacturing sector. So any kind of manufacturing, as I said, delay in getting the raw materials exporting. Agriculture sector, as Irfan said, that is a big, it can be coffee, rice, seafood, anything. Because when it comes to perishable food, it's a big challenge. So like things like furniture maybe can delay, but when it comes to perishable food, the timing is a big problem as well. Textile and garment industry, as Irfan said, is another big issue. Automotive sector. So because we have companies like VinFast and local companies, also international companies are manufacturing vehicles in Vietnam. Then definitely logistics. So once logistics and supply chain get affected, means every single industry is being affected.
I think part of the problem, the bigger challenge is because a lot of FDIs and international companies, due to the, we learned a lesson from the COVID that we can't really rely on a one single market. Like you see, 46% of the whole world supplies were going from China. But after that, companies learned that they need to diversify their supplies. So a lot of companies are actually moving and developing their manufacturing here in Vietnam. However, this Red Sea problem, when you move your the Italian companies, for example, or Brazilian companies. So I have a quite number of discussion in the expos here in SECC in Ho Chi Minh City. So the biggest challenge is that when these companies actually move after COVID, and then this issue actually started. So they are actually setting up the businesses in partnership with the Vietnamese companies here, and particularly shoe manufacturers, textile and garments is really the big sector here in Vietnam. I think those companies bring their specific technologies, bring their raw material from those countries, high-end material, which actually top up the additional cost. But then you can't really move at the rates, particularly where your consumers can actually buy.
Right, certainly.
Due to this change of the shipment of the route. So extra premiums you have to pay. And this creates a big challenge for those companies who actually are the new startups or the new manufacturing unit here in partnership with companies as well. And I think one more issue is let's not forget about SMEs and micro companies. There are the small companies, which is roughly around 80 to 85% of the Vietnam economy, in terms of any production here in Vietnam. So they suffers a lot because on one end they are trying to boost their production, but on other end, their size in terms of the production is quite small. So the fair share which actually they get from this whole value chain is actually being impacted a lot due to this particular issue. Yeah.
Right, so just speaking about the seafood industry alone, as recently the Vietnam Association of Seafood Exporters and Producers, or VASEP, have already reported the freight rate hike. And many of the shipping firms, including Yang Ming, Evergreen, HMM, and Maersk, have already increased the cargo shipping rates to the US, Canada, and EU because of the Red Sea issues. And also, according to VASEP, about 80% of exports to the east coast of US, Canada, and EU have to go through the Suez Canal. But now they have to divert the route and go through the Good Hope Cape in South Africa instead. So it means that the journey is now 7 or 10 days longer, like you said, 9 days, in some cases weeks. So looking ahead with no end in sight, do you foresee that the Red Sea crisis impacting Vietnam's trade and how it would impact the trade relations between Vietnam and the international partners, particularly Asia, US, and the EU?
In my view, it will definitely have an impact on the trade volume. So, the orders will be less. I think we can actually see that. Some of the companies are laying off the staff because they have to reduce the...
Mainly FDI companies.
A lot of industries. The trade...
I can give you the example. I have a friend who was actually working here, and the company was focusing on the sustainable textile, and they started around 5 years ago, and they actually brought this fabulous technology, sustainable technology and green production here in Vietnam, and they are, I think, the second company in the world. So and then right after that the COVID came, and then after the COVID, they started back. They were trying to go, stand on their foot and try to establish their supply base. But then this particular Red Sea event happened actually, and that company actually laid off quite a number of expat staff recently. So it's if we particularly look at a strategic point of view, how this Red Sea is going to impact on the Vietnam directly. I think, as Dr. Majo mentioned about like the trade volume, because Europe is one of the biggest end market for Vietnam in terms of many sectors. Fisheries is there, and textile, footwear industry, rubber industry is so. I think it's going to impact a lot to Vietnam, because this is one of the important route in the future.
Another thing is a shift in trade patterns. So they have to find new ways of doing business, and they have to get how did we cope with COVID? So and because there are big impact on supply chains and cost. What I feel is this also gives us opportunities, and for mainly regional integration. Maybe we start looking at raw materials regionally without being impacted here. So instead of maybe importing, the companies might be looking at opportunities where instead of importing it from other countries through that, what about developing locally? And maybe they want to make sure the standard, so we can try to see how we can improve the standard of the production of the products locally, not just from Vietnam, but from within the region, without being impacted. So companies will, I think people see these kind of incidents as also as an opportunity. Of course, it's a crisis, it's a problem, but opportunity as well.
I think another bigger challenge for Vietnam is because after COVID, it's not only Vietnam, but many other countries, the supply chain players and whoever want the manufacturing from the Southeast Asian region, the countries are actually looking at them, like Indonesia, Myanmar, Cambodia, because
Bangladesh,
Bangladesh as well, because they are cost competitive, and in terms of certain competencies, those countries are quite well established, you know. So that is also, I think, is going to be a bit of challenge, which is going to, in the future, from cost competitive point of view, Vietnam is going to, I think, have to handle.
Right. And of course, assessing the resilience of Vietnam's economy amidst this external shock is very crucial. So how do you evaluate it, and what strategies that Vietnamese businesses need to adopt to like navigate through this turbulence period?
In my view, thanks to COVID, Vietnam did fantastic. So I'm not worried. Of course, there's a crisis, but that is not going to affect very badly for a long time, because during COVID it was worse and we survived. So
you've been described as will not.
I don't think, but it will have an impact. Definitely will have an impact. But I think the resilience of Vietnamese companies are very strong, the companies who are working here. So I think that there's a very good way. Number one, they might be thinking ways of how they can diversify the trade. So they can see new opportunities, and they can also, we can find the new markets, or even the existing market, but with the new routes, the new ways of doing. Then flexible supply chain facilities. I mean, they can change depending on the marketing conditions. How we can do, even those companies, supporting those companies who are following the just in time. Change the investment infrastructure, and I'm sure the Vietnamese government is very keen and see how to support the local industries. So that measures definitely will help. And also, it's also a good chance for the country to develop new technology, which we don't have. And we started maybe manufacturing, as I said, more raw materials, more things here locally. So I see that this is a good opportunity for the country.
But those most of them are the long-term strategies. And right now, many businesses, local businesses, have said that the increasing in freight rates seem very unreasonable, and and the issue is being escalated, and it might take years. So no end in sight. So it is really difficult for buyers and sellers to adopt strategies in a short term. What are your takes on this?
Yeah, I think the companies have to adapt a little bit more, because it's not only, I mean, for the short term strategy point of view, we need to find a way that we can find the quick buyers, and we can sell our product, and we can keep our operations keep up and running. You know, that's the prime for any small and medium companies. And although, you know, the Europe is the biggest market, or countries like North America, that region, or United States and Canada, although this route is impacting, however, finding some local bases like Vietnam is part of the Southeast Asian Agreement, which is the free trade, you know. So a lot of companies, you know, when we talk to them, they say, oh, we don't actually sell to the local markets, or we only focus on the Europe and that. So I think there is a sort of learning curve here that the company should think about, and not wait and think about this problem a lot, but try to find a way that they should find the buyers here and try to improve their supply chain. This will help them actually, as I said, that they can manage their operational cost as well, the flow, and then maybe finding and developing better, diversifying the whole supply network as well.
Right, but many shipments have been stuck in the sea. What the business should do with those?
I think although what happened is happened, but then, you know, this is a great lesson for the companies to particularly look at negotiation and talking out the terms and conditions, and try to make sure that whatever the commodities or the materials actually they purchase, or even if they sell the finished good to those particular markets, they try to have the fair terms and conditions. For example, insurance is really much important in this case. That if the Red Sea crisis impact a lot and you can't really get your shipments, then how can you start your production? Or how can you meet the end demand of your customers? So there should be a sort of what we say is like the collaborative arrangement between buyer and supplier on the companies to overcome this particular issue.
Certainly, insurance is one of the big issue here, because since COVID time, the insurance premium have already been increased a lot.
True.
So now adding up to with the Red Sea crisis as well. So how much is the cost that the businesses need to bear, or eventually consumers have to pay for their goods after all of these issues that happened?
That's what I told you in the introduction. It's a quite high, because at the end of the day, consumer is the one who is actually bearing all these things. So that is why businesses are being affected, and that is why, like Dr. Irfan said, we need to start looking into new markets, new opportunities, and that's one thing, and also see that how we can actually support. For example, we can think of alternative ways. So we can also be looking about the railroad transportations. So see how it will be more economical, even air cargo. So we can need to consider about that, because now it is being expensive. But when we start transporting in bulk quantities, the cost will go down. So that is also one alternative, and it will be faster as well. We might not had yet started looking into it, but crisis like this may be giving an opportunity to look into, consider alternative routes. It can be rail routes. I mean, and now a lot of countries are actually looking into having roads from Asia to Europe. So wherever you can reach up to, then you can go send things by train or by road, or even fly. So,
but I mean, at the moment, or maybe just in the very near future, there's no way for insurance premium to the cost to get down, right?
I think this is a question, as I said, that it's a win-win strategy that the company should actually apply, and the businesses should think about that. They should not actually be impacted by the insurance on their end only. So. There are certain terms and conditions, in global supply chain that you can push all the insurance costs to your either buyer side or the supplier side. But
so it should be shared.
It should be shared. It should be a win-win. It should be because this problem doesn't occur from their side or from our side.
Right.
So it should be a collaborative. What we use the term is collaborative advantage, and that's if the companies collaborate. Both buyer and supplier can sell, or they can actually consume these particular services in a good manner.
Right. Okay. And just last week, the Ministry of Industry and Trade and the Maritime Administrations have already convened a meeting in Hanoi to address the impact and discuss solutions for this issue. So according to you, what measures that the government and many other relevant stakeholders in Vietnam need to implement in order to minimize the severity of the impact of the issue?
I think we should think of diversifying the shipping routes, and the government must also support the industries. There's a high cost in it, so the government can pitch in a little bit into that. That will actually help. And as I said before, consider possibility of using air freight, flight. It's expensive enough, but with the government support, I think we can have methods to look into that possibility as well. Then companies also need to optimize their inventory management. So once they can enhance certain management practices for the buffer against the potential supply chain disruptions, that also will be a good way. They have safety stock levels, etc. So the companies can actually manage, if they can manage it nicely, it will not impact them very badly. Then, of course, they have to negotiate contracts with insurance, with the shipping companies, with the buyers. So, I mean, everybody knows this crisis, right? So it's not something people don't know. Everyone knows it, and everybody is been affected. So people know that, and have more collaboration with partners. So that will definitely help especially in the short-term ones, and in the long term, as Dr. Irfan
I think
mentioned,
I would like to add from the government side. I think it's really important, as I said, that a lot of companies are either small companies or medium organizations. So particularly these high tariffs and the insurance premiums and the transportation cost really is impacting them. So one of the key measures the government could take is like offering the subsidy, and maybe reduction in the taxes as well. Maybe offering them sort of a mechanism in terms of the less paperwork or flexible paperwork, reducing the cost of handling cost and stuff like that, which emerge from the government side. I think this could also be a bit of what we say is like help the company to have a bit of reduction in their cost as well. On the other end, as Dr. Majo mentioned about technology is really important player. So a lot of companies here did not actually have the right technologies like the supply chain solution. So quite a number of processes are still paper-based, or they are particularly manually handled by the staff members. So I think that is one of the key area where the government can actually develop the readiness for the organization and support them to develop this competency, to improve their technical capability, and that can help the company to actually understand about like what are their supplies, what are their demands, what are their number of orders, how much is the total cost of the ownership of a certain acquisition or the material or the shipments which actually they send through. This will actually help the companies to actually negotiate with their foreign partners as well, or any partners, and will help them to manage the cost as well. I think part of the problem, as we are talking about, is management and demands and their accuracy as well. We talked about like the win-win negotiation, but on the other hand, yes, the production is there, the products are produced, but then who is there to buy? So as Dr. Majo mentioned about the contract, I think these are really much important, because yes, through the communication, a lot of companies say, yes, I'm committed to buy, but if there is no agreement particularly written, and it is not applied, definitely it's going to have a big shock to the companies who are small and medium organizations, because they lose a lot in this particular game.
To add to what Irfan said, that if you ask me what the government can do, in my opinion, it is, that's what I said, we already had an experience during COVID. And during the COVID time, I think all over the world, people are really, really impressed about how the government supported all industries, every people in Vietnam as well. We are here, so you don't have to worry, we are here. So as long as the government is giving that message to the industry, we are here to support. We know the crisis, this is out of our control. We did nothing for this one, but it happened, but it's impacting, but we are here to be with you. That confidence, once the government is giving to the industries will find their own ways to overcome this situation. And as Dr. Irfan said, we need to see how we can implement latest technologies, and that will definitely help industry to optimize their stock, their sales, their production without much interruption.
I think the large companies already have established these technologies as well. They have established the online processes as well. They should take care of the small companies. I think they should take them on the board, try to help them, integrate them as part of like Big Brother, to take on this particular issue, and then help them to handle them effectively, because the big companies have the big volumes, big production, better process is there as well. And I think the small companies who actually struggle, as I said. So if big companies take this role and then take those particular big chunk, which of the supply chain, which is small and medium, organizations to help them to be part of their supply chain. That's what we say is aggregation, you know. So if they aggregate their supplies, this can also help to reduce the cost and help the companies to run their operations.
In short, we work as a team.
Yeah. Okay. And of course, obviously, after more than 5 months since Hamas attacked Israel in October last year, and up to now in Vietnam, obviously we have felt the impact, and the governments have at least gathered around the experts and officials in the industry to discuss about it. So the most important thing right now is what we should do going forward, moving forward to address the issue. So just to wrap up our discussion today, what immediate and long-term implications on the Vietnam Strait dynamics that you foresee, and what we should do as a result of this crisis moving forward?
Initially, what we mentioned up to now is support. The government have to say that, okay, we are here, so we will definitely support, and we will find diplomatic ways also. At the same time, we need to look into new opportunities, new ways, which we had not ever thought. Like, for example, when mobile phone came, people never thought that, people never had this idea that you could carry a phone with you. So then it immediately came, and now they are carrying a computer with us, right? A phone is like a mini computer. So this idea was not there before. So like that, to overcome this crisis, we need to look into new areas where we had not even looked up to now. So I think that is one of the things the government can start looking into, as well as with the industries. And I definitely agree with what Dr. Irfan said. If the big companies and the small companies work together, and the big companies like Big Brothers are supporting the small and medium enterprises, we can overcome this crisis very soon.
Yeah, but I mean, looking more into the future, I wanted actually to hear more about your predictions or what you foresee in the future after. Of course, we don't want any other crisis that going to happen in the future, but as a result of the Red Sea crisis.
I think Vietnam has the government, and Vietnam itself has a very great policy. Vietnam has very strong relationships with China, United States, India, Australia. Any country you pick in this world, Vietnam has a very good relationship. I think that's one of the competence which could be utilized by the Vietnamese government to actually work with all these different partners to diffuse this situation, because it's not only that particular region is actually entangled in it, as we talked about, like it's adding up the cost, it's impacting the consumers as well, it impacting the growers as well. So it's everyone. So I think that, as I said, like the Vietnam government can play this particular strategic role, and they can emerge as a sort of taking a lead and helping the whole world actually to develop a better global value chain.
Right. So, any final thoughts?
It's all about quantity, right? So that if we integrate big and small businesses, we can actually have more negotiating power when we talk with shipping companies, insurance, rather than a small medium. Say, I have one container to export, but we come with a big company and say that we have 20 containers to export. Our bargaining ability is very big. That is where I recommend that the government also interfere and integrate the companies, work together, and we have more quantities, import and export, eventually, which will help definitely, because we work on the quantity. That is something immediately we can think of. So then we can negotiate with the shipping companies, insurance companies, etc. So we have huge quantities we are talking about, rather than small companies going to deal with them in small quantities.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I would say that we always talked of the lean supply chain and agile supply chain, but looking at these COVID-19 and this particular Red Sea issue, I don't think so the lean supply chain could exist anymore. The important point here is that we can stay in the market as a producer from the company point of view, And to do that, time really is a big factor. But then we need to have the consistent business, constant production.
Yeah.
Just one last thing, how each of you would want for the tensions in the Middle East, that happening in the Middle East right now.
For the Middle East thing, it's a very complicated thing. But if you look back centuries before, if there is a crisis in a small part of the world, it only affected there, and that was fine. I mean, whatever issues there, they could get it solved there. But now, any issues anywhere in the world is affecting the whole world, because we have this global...
This has spread.
Yeah. So when there is a crisis, I think now people start thinking that we are going to affect the whole world. So we should move towards roundtables, discussions, rather than going to the violent side. So if all sides are ready for, maybe they may have to have more roundtables, but that's okay. That would be much more helpful in my view, because it's affecting every single
at least the war needs to be contained.
Sometimes some countries or some people in some areas, they might not even know what is this crisis, what is happening here. They might not even know about it. So, but still they have been affected. So that is why in my view, it should be roundtable discussions, more discussions. It might take time, but that's the way forward.
Yes,
I think we have seen enough of this ripple effect, which we actually talk about this crisis. We have seen so many lives has been lost, and we have seen every day in the news, the children are dying due to the hunger. The world should actually think about as a community. I think that's really important. End of the day, it's not viable for any country to, because once the war starts, it leads to disasters, and it impacts everyone's life. It's not only certain countries. So it's really important for all the countries to sit together and see like how much actually it has impacted in terms of not only the prices, but in terms of the humanity as well. And we talk a lot about the social supply chain, the social perspective of the supply chain. However, I think it's really the time for all the countries to think about to not escalate further. Because as I said, this is a ripple effect. There is one event and then there is a counter event to that one. So we should try to diffuse. As I said, like Vietnam can play an important role in that one. They have strong relationships, and I think they can help to diffuse this.
Sure.
And I think one more thing is opportunities. This is all, crisis comes. Crisis, it is not just a full stop. It also opens new doors. There are new opportunities. What we need to do is we need to explore the possibility, new markets. Of course, Europe and the US is our biggest market, but we need to look into the new markets as well, like Middle East, like Africa. So they're all emerging countries, right? So when a crisis comes, in my view, we should say, hey, what next? How can I overcome this? So and in Vietnam is very good at that. We proved that during COVID. So I've been living in this country for more than 20 years. So I had seen that. So I know, and I'm very confident that
I think that particular region, you see, like the whole oil actually is exported to the whole world. So if anything happens in that particular region, the whole world actually suffers in terms of the prices or in terms of the commodity and growth and all that. So, and it's important, and I think all countries actually work together with that particular regional area, as far as we can see, like so many round of talks and debates have been going on. So let's hope for the best, you know, like it finishes soon, and then it brings the peace in the world for everybody.
Certainly. So, and I think every one of us have really putting in a lot of efforts, and even our talk show right now, contribute to that effort as well, to spread out the message that we want the world to hear. We want our voice to be heard, because in Vietnamese there is saying that war is not a game. So no one is winning here in terms of a humanitarian aspect. So, and Dr. Major and Dr. Irfan, thank you very much for sharing very valuable insights about the Red Sea crisis that is happening right now. And we would, like you said, we hope for the best and for world peace that will soon be restored.
Thank you very much.
You
we are very optimistic about it.
Okay.
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to come here and share our thoughts with you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
And of course, it's evidence that navigating through such turbulence time will require strategies, planning, and collaboration among the stakeholders. And as we continue to monitor the developments in the global trade, let us remain vigilant and adaptive to ensure resilience and thriving economy. So that's all for today on FBNC Smart Money, and join us next time as we delve into more about crucial topics shaping the world of business and finance. And until then, stay informed, stay ahead, and goodbye.